So if you want to build a faceless brand, or if you want to build a B2B brand that is more so commercial-like, this was not the process that I would suggest for you. It's more so if you want to build a personal brand, you had a product or service and you want to share it personally, then this is the process that I would suggest for you. Welcome back to another solo episode of the Work and Play podcast. I'm your host, Arylle Young, and today we're going to get into a bit of a journey that a lot of people have gone through as content creators, and you might be going through the exact same thing. So one of the most important parts of transitioning from a 9-to-5er to an entrepreneur or a freelancer is understanding what your revenue generating activities are. But that's not the most simplest thing to figure out. It takes some strategy. It takes some brainstorming. It takes some finding yourself as an entrepreneur for you to figure out, one, what will people buy from me? And then what's actually valuable for my clients? And then two, how do I home in on creating content that's specifically geared towards that result? So over the years, me trying to figure out what type of content do I need to put out there, what feels natural to me, what is easy for me to put out, so I can be consistent. All of those things, it was a trial and error, a process of trial and error. And if you want to, step out there and start, doing the things that you really want to do, speaking about the things that you really want to speak about, just showing your talents, your gifts in a way that are easy and digestible and you can even make some money off of, then you're going to want to listen and watch this episode, because I'm going to take you through my journey of how I learned to evolve as a content creator, and then how you can be intentional about your journey if this is something that you want to transition into. So without further ado, let's get into it. I broke down my notes in four steps, really understanding how did I go from using Instagram and YouTube really as just a toy, or going on YouTube just to kind of search things every now and then, to really relying on social media in a way that if I go to YouTube, I am searching for actual information to learn from. And then I'm going even deeper into understanding, how do I invest in this content even further? Because a lot of times people go to YouTube and they want to learn stuff. They stop at that 30-minute video and now they feel like they're an expert. But most times, this is a content creator tip, people will create content for YouTube so that you can understand if you want to invest further in that person, in that entrepreneur, or that product, or that service, because you've now gotten a taste of what you can learn, what the person is all about. So when it comes to how I went from start using these platforms as toys to now using them for strategic reasons, it's gone from no know-how at all to now having a really good grip on how to strategically position myself and even my clients so that they can be better positioned to generate revenue in their businesses. So let's start with phase one. First of all, I never thought about using social media until I realized I needed to start my own business, and you can't necessarily have a business, at least an online business, without having a social media presence. So my social media presence was more of a necessity than even an evolution of me using it and consistent on it personally. I literally was at a point where I'd never used social media at all, to the point where I said, okay, now I have a business, I have to learn how to post. So this is my foundation of going from using social media just really as a toy and having fun with it, to using it as a strategic tool. So the first question that you might have when you're trying to figure out, how do I develop as a content creator, is what do I post? And for me, it was definitely a trial and error process. I had to put things out there and see what my audience responded to. But there is one strategic thing that I will say that I did, and I think it worked really, really well because I got great feedback, and it's doing a mind map. So if you've ever heard of a mind map, it's essentially starting with one main idea, and then you're building off of that idea with random thoughts that come up or associated thoughts that come up. And then as you come up with like this second sphere of ideas, you now build on those ideas and see what comes up next. Now, as you look at your mind map after you've done this for like 35, 45 minutes, and you now see that you started with one main idea, like, for example, who am I? Let's say, who is Arylle Young? That's what my first main mind map nucleus was, right? And then I start breaking out parts of me that I might want to share on social media. So mine started with me being a vegan, me singing, me being a career coach. These were different elements of my life. I said, how do I actually create content around these things? So I started this second layer of who is Arylle with just these like different high level identities, if you will, of who I was. Now, going deeper, creating like little thought bubbles around these ideas, I'm thinking to myself, what are activities that I can share? What are things that I do in my daily life that I would take a picture of or videotape? What are things that I'm learning? Because I was also in school at the time. So what are some things that I'm learning that I actually want to share as well that have a lot to do with me being a career coach? It really made it easy for me to just go all out and look at a whole mind map of ideas and even start crossing things out as I go. So you don't see very much content on my social media about me being vegan, and that's because it's not necessarily something that I am a guru about, and it's honestly something that I decided to do because of my own personal reasons as opposed to spiritual reasons or even like dietary reasons. So for me, it was just a personal dietary choice, and I didn't necessarily feel like that was a huge part of who I am. So I didn't share very much of it. So when you do a mind map for yourself, when you sit down and you really think about who you are in the different parts of your life, you might find 50, maybe even 100 ideas that you typically embody, but you might find that there's only 3 things that you really want to share, and that is where the content lies. So if you want to build a faceless brand, or if you want to build a B2B brand that is more so commercial-like, this was not the process that I would suggest for you. It's more so if you know you want to build a personal brand, you know you had a product or service, and you want to share it personally, then this is the process that I would suggest for you. So being intentional around your content means that you create content that is specifically, strategically related to whatever it is that you want to offer. Again, I started as an entrepreneur, so I knew that every single piece of content was going to somehow come back to my bread and butter, which was my career coaching business. So when you think about what is it that you're posting for, don't just get carried away posting pictures of your food. Post pictures of your food if you want to connect that back to the fact that this meal is a free write-up because you're an entrepreneur or because you are a nutritionalist or a dietitian person. Or let's take it a different route. If you're a beauty person and you post a picture of your food, talk about how the different elements of your meal are helpful for your skin, for your hair, for your nails. And then you can talk about the content with intentionality as opposed to creating content on the fly and then just kind of throwing it out there. Now, once you do that and you're starting to have good conversation around your content, you'll see that it seems like you're posting this or a lot of random stuff about yourself, but you're being very intentional and very strategic with the type of content that you put out there, and you'll start to receive acknowledgement for the things that you actually do. You might even get questions more about, hey, what type of beauty tips do you have? Or hey, what is that product that you mentioned in the caption? I want to learn more about it. So thinking about your content from a broader perspective and then being intentional from a tactical perspective when you actually post can really, really help you just be very fluid with your content in the beginning. So I used to think that influencers had a really dope way of sharing everything about themselves until I realized as I became more of an influencer myself, people tend to know what you put out there and then what you create a theme around. So think about your favorite influencer. Do they have a kid? Maybe you know, maybe you don't know. But if they have a child, what do they share about that child? Let's go deeper into the example. They might share their parenting advice or a moment of their child acting up or a really, really cute photo of their child. But do they go into the moments of discipline with their children, or do they go into the moments of, sick time when their baby is sick and things like that? if you notice, there are elements of real life that are just not a part of that influencer's content, and that is intentional. Because one thing that you want to recognize is there are boundaries that you want to create if this is the world you want to go into. Just because you posted a picture of your child does not necessarily mean you want the whole world to know about their diet regimen. Just because you post about their food does not necessarily mean that you want everyone to know what school they go to. So think about the areas of life that you don't mind sharing. Again, if you want to be a personal brand, and then stick to those things with intention unless you decide you want to change up a little bit or allow people to see a window or a glimpse into other parts of your life. So again, don't stress about your content in the beginning. It can be very broad. As long as you make that decision, I promise you, people will understand parts about you simply because you've already been strategic about them in the beginning. So if you're not quite sure what to post, start by thinking about parts of your life that you want to share, and then try to connect each part that you decide you want to share to your product or service if you know you want to relate everything back to a business. If everything doesn't necessarily go back to a business and you're just trying to stay in the content creator lane, then the mind map is all you need to get started.
Listen, guys, there's only one thing that's stopping you from making consistent revenue on your podcast, and that's one, because you haven't decided that your podcast is a business, but two, you don't have an automated process that's going to get you consistent revenue on your podcast on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. So if you know you want to get revenue on your podcast, but you just haven't started making money yet, click the link below, learn about the Podcast Machine. It's a system that I created for my own podcast, and now I'm helping other clients do the exact same thing. So get into the Podcast Machine, get your podcast automated, and start making money on your podcast today. Now let's get back into the episode.
When you think about any brand and a brand that actually advertises, they do not skimp on how often they want to be in your face. And with social media, you now have the opportunity to be in front of your clients at all times. Remember, even if you post 5 times a day, every single follower is not going to see every piece of content. They may see more of your content if you're consistent, but they may see only 3 posts of yours a day because they have other people that they follow. So don't stress yourself out about, am I posting too much? Is my audience getting tired of me? If they are getting tired of you and they're unfollowing you, that's probably because they're not your client. So don't stress about when to post or posting too much. You can never post too much. You want to be everywhere at all times, and then you want to engage with your client in as many places as you can. As an entrepreneur, I learned that the most important thing when it comes to being a freelancer or being on my own is still generating cash. And if I'm not generating cash, then I'm really not an entrepreneur, and I'm this close to going backwards, which is to my 9 to 5. So even if you want to be a content creator and you want to have fun with it, starting from not knowing exactly what to post and knowing what you want to post is a great part of just growing as a content creator. But once you know what works for you, you can now start asking your audience to patronize you, to support your pages, to support other people's channels, simply because they know who you are and you've built that know, like, and trust factor. Now, the next phase of content creation and growing as a content creator would be knowing what's working. So to segue from talking about analytics and knowing when to post, using analytics can also help you figure out what is actually working, what is your audience like. I remember in the beginning of my journey, I personally wanted to post more about psychology and the things that I was learning in school. And so I relied heavily on quote cards and carousels and information type posts because I wanted people to focus on my brain. But if I just so happen to post a picture, a full body picture, and I'm not necessarily doing very much, people will be all over it. And I started to realize, okay, people actually like seeing me on camera, so there's something to be said here. That was not necessarily when I decided to start putting more photos of me out there. It took me to have a business coach for her to actually evaluate my social media and then tell me, it looks like people are responding to your photos more than they're responding to the educational posts. So maybe you want to start to lay some educational information into your photos so that people can now respond to the content that they actually are interested in. So it was a merge between what they like and what I'm going to share once I started to merge good two strategies. if you have any questions, I really would love to hear what you think about this episode. I am on my own journey, and I realize that we are all here to be pioneers. Whether we're the first CEO in our family, whether we are the first content creator in our friend group, all of these things were new to me in the beginning, and they might be new to you. So you can be a pioneer in your life, and you don't have to settle for just a regular humdrum 9 to 5 if that's not what you want for yourself. So if you know that is not what you want for yourself, and you want to get more creative, start today. Do some practical things you can do right now to get into the life that you desire. And I will see you in the next episode. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Until next time, I'll see you on another episode of the Work and Play podcast. Peace.